The 2015 Polyglot Gathering is brought to you by italki. Become fluent in any language.
I'm very pleased to be here talking to this group because I have presented this material at cross-cultural psychology, international business, and applied linguistics conferences. But I think only this group can really understand it deeply. So also, unlike, I don't know if you attended my previous presentation on Asian languages, no time for questions. Opposite this time, I will stop at certain points when I talk about one certain subject and then open it up for any comments or questions. And then we'll move on to the next one. I don't know how far we'll get. Let's just see. I tried to make the most important ones first. Okay, so you have the title here. This is a book impressed by Springer. It's an academic publisher, so it might be very expensive. I'm a professor of international management. I teach that in Japan. So, okay. So what did I look at? Well, in international management, we want to know if we send somebody abroad, can they function well in a different culture? So there are various instruments to use to judge whether or not they can. And so what I've done is I've used one of these to see if the same social, psychological, and affective factors would predict who's better in the target language in terms of oral proficiency. Not necessarily written, but rather like conversation. So I'm bringing together foreign language acquisition and cross-cultural management, international human resource management. So I'm very interested in this because I love languages, and I'm from here. And at age 18, I left the United States and I went south, and then I went east. Studied in Switzerland, studied in Poland, and worked in Germany. And but I've spent most of my time here in Japan, 34 years. Okay, so the instrument I use is this one. I'm going to go through this part quickly because it's just statistics and things like that. And if you have questions, you can ask later. This instrument has 3 general domains, 5 categories in each one, or sorry, 6 in the last one. Okay, so I looked at a lot of research that tries to figure out how psychological traits affects people's ability in acquiring a foreign language. And there were many issues. I think I overcame them. I won't go through these now, but if you just have a quick look, if you want to ask about them later. Okay, so the methods, I also just briefly give it to you. 86 Chinese students at my university. We teach in Japanese. Okay, so they all have to be fluent, well, they all have to be able to function academically in Japanese to get in the university. And some had been there in Japan for 2 years, some for 12 years. Some were as young as 20, some were 32 years old, up to 32 years old. Okay, so they filled out this questionnaire. They went to an interview which was videotaped, and then 6 native Japanese speakers ranked them according to, force ranked them, the best, well, divided by 5, so they had the best, what's the number? 15, 16, 18? Anyhow, they ranked them into 5 different groups, and then I see how these results correlated with their responses on the instrument. Okay, well, the important thing is that there were no significant relationships between all these factors and their ability. You know, like what age did they come to Japan, or whether they could speak Japanese before they came. Okay, so the summary results said that 14 of these 16 factors I showed you were highly significant. Yeah, this is the boring part. Okay, so These are statistics. I have many more ways. I use many other ways to look at statistics. I won't go through them, but just point out the strongest was self-identity. Okay. So if you know statistics, you have correlation here. They're all very highly significant. The ones are. Okay. Let's just go right into it. All right. Now we're going to start the part where I want you to react to. All right. Okay. So the first question is self-identity was the most important. So what is identity? I like this quote. All right. We're always telling ourselves a story. We're creating our identity constantly. So we don't necessarily explicitly think about it all the time. Implicitly, we're building our identity. So it really only comes to the front if there's some kind of crisis. Who am I type? Crisis. And this happens a lot when you're living in a foreign country and speaking foreign languages. Okay, so the ability and the tendency to identify with other human beings is essential in the development, the transmission of culture and language. So language is really, it's a process of identity construction and how a person sees him or herself in relation to that group, in relation to the speakers of that language with their culture. So it's really not such an abstract concept. It's something we experience in life. Okay, it's a strong identity involves deep connections with others. They have shared histories and experiences. There's this reciprocity, affection, mutual commitments. So the languages we speak and how we speak them, they define our linguistic and cultural identity. So everyone has a dialect. People say, oh yeah, he speaks without an accent. So everyone has a dialect and an accent. It may be the main one, therefore people say this is the standard, so they don't have dialect or an accent. So because the accent, the dialect, gives our social, cultural, historical, and geographic identity. You know where somebody's from, their social class, their education, their sexual preference, etc., etc. Okay, so through our accents, we reveal our affiliation with specific groups. They may be national, regional, ethnic, social, educational, religious, etc. So you're given an accent, your accent in a given language, it's a conscious or an unconscious choice. People may say, no, I can't control it. You know, I just can't get the accent. No, you made a choice, whether it's conscious or it's something that you haven't explicitly dealt with, brought to the front so you can deal with it. It's strongly affected by your linguistic and cultural identity, along with emotions associated with a sense of belonging to the group that uses that accent. So you can see this in a monolingual situation as well as a multilingual. In other words, you can be a monolingual and still experience this issue. You move from one region to the country to another, especially as a child, let's say 14, 15 years old. If people make fun of your accent, you're going to do something about it. You're going to imitate the local people, or you're going to try to find a neutral accent. So really, I think this is a very interesting point that McGilchrist makes, is that a child really doesn't acquire a language like any more than a skill of life. It's not by learning rules that you acquire it. Okay, it's by imitation, identification, emphatic identification with those people who are important to the child. And the same is true with adults, but there are many other factors we have to consider. So I've developed this belief or theory that there's a strong correlation between individuals' flexibility in their self-identity in terms of language and culture. So it's a language ego, it's a cultural ego, and ego permeability. How well these can seep in and change your identity. And of course, openness to learning other languages. So this includes dialects, speech patterns, etc. So when I say flexibility here, in terms of identity, it doesn't necessarily mean you're schizophrenic or have multiple identity disorder. But multiple identity disorder shows how strong our ability is to switch identities, to take on a new identity. So it's really, there's a core identity, okay? And if we want to talk more about that later, we can talk about it, but there's something core there. And many people have spoken about, what makes it. I say it's mainly essential values is the core, and the rest is peripheral. Okay, so we can talk about ego permeability and self-identity together. So emphatic individuals with high ego permeability, they're the ones who sound like approach native-like speech. And the development of a language ego, it parallels the development of the ego in general. So as you look at children, their language identity, their cultural identity, of course, is going to not develop any faster than their general sense of self. Okay, when a child is born, there's no separation. How can we know this? There's no separation between the child and the world. They don't know that this thing is their hand or that thing is their foot. Okay, or that you or somebody else. And then they start to develop a sense of self as something, as an individual. This is an interesting philosophical and religious discussion too, but I don't think we should get into it because it'll take a long time. Okay, so hence we see in children, people say, oh, children, yeah, they can pick up the language so easy and sound like a native. Yeah, of course, because their general ego development or their cultural and linguistic identity is still at a very early stage. But watch most children. They'll drop another identity, drop another language quite quickly. If it's not reinforced by emotional salience, it's emotionally valuable. So this is very interesting, guys. I'm going to stop in about 2 minutes. Griora contends that learning, he said second, I put in multiple. Language learning, it exerts a very specific demand in regards to your self-representation, how you represent yourself. Okay, so when you learn a new language, you're taking on a new identity. So we can take a look at ego boundaries and emotional sensitivity to others. They're closely related. And Griora did a very interesting experiment. I don't know how he got permission to use Valium with students, because this is back in the 60s when this is a common street drug. Well, he used Valium, alcohol, and hypnosis, and so did some other people, to see, okay, when you do that, you become more permeable. I was very ego permeability last night after the beers and such, and dancing to that great music. I became overly friendly, perhaps, I don't know. They found out that, you become more sensitive. But they tried two things. There's this Thai language, okay? And maybe you heard a little bit of Thai, if you haven't heard Thai before. It's not easy to pronounce, okay? 32 vowels, one and on, tones. They were much better when they took this and when they reacted to the human, they showed a difference. When it came to the tape, no, nothing. So if you're trying to learn an accent from a tape, you have to imagine a person in your head and create some emotional connection with your artificial native speaker. Okay. All right, let's go. Let's start now. Was there any questions? Yes, please. Microphone, please. Microphone. We have another microphone. I'm going to stop at this point and go if there's any comments or questions, and then we'll continue.
There's a red button. On the bottom. Let's check it. It's off. There is a small red button on the bottom of the device.
You could just talk and
talk.
Yeah. Okay. I just wasn't
familiar with the term ego permeability. I was wondering how you define that or measure it. Because you said there was a correlation, so how is that measured?
No, it's a valid question. I'm just trying to think how I should answer that. You know the word permeability? So when something's permeable, something can seep through, come through. So semi-permeable membrane for example, cleaning water. So the water can go through, but not the dirt and such. So permeable means it can go into, and you know, ego as a sense of self. Okay, how do you measure it? Well, there's a number of just, how do you measure whether somebody's open or extroverted, introverted? Same type of thing. Okay?
So does that mean personality tests or?
There's a number, yeah.
I understand the analogy, I just didn't
Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's certain instruments to measure, exactly. Anything else? Just continue on? Okay. All right, so empathy is this process of comprehending in which there's a temporary fusion between the self and the object boundaries. Okay, this gets a little bit philosophical, and I don't know if you've thought about it, but our boundaries of the way we see ourselves and egos and something that what's outside of us at various, all the time there are various levels of separation. So the earliest pattern of object relations permit an immediate emotional apprehension of the affective experience of another. In other words, you feel what they feel, okay? When you're more emphatic and you have greater ego permeability. More emphatic individuals, they tend to listen better and better attuned to the features of the native speaker's speech. And they acquire more native-like proficiency. Okay, they're affected more by whom they are interacting with. Okay, so the positive effects of empathy may be limited by social, cultural factors, their identity issues, and they lead to a learner reluctance to imitate the patterns of the language. There's a study I'll talk about later about accents in Hebrew, where they're looking at immigrants from Russia and local Arabs who also speak Hebrew as a second language, and this becomes a big issue here. Okay, it's the social cultural factors which affect their accent. They don't want to identify with it. They want to show themselves as separate. So the more I identify with the new culture, the easier it is for me to imitate speech patterns, accent, body language, etc. So this process leads to the formation of a new linguistic and cultural identity. So if I'm learning a new language and if I'm able to have a lot of experience, meaningful experiences in that language, then it's much more easy to speak that language later. Okay, so there are languages which I spoke 30-something years ago, but easy for me to get back into them. There are others that I reached also high level recently, but I didn't have that many experiences. They're hard to bring back. Okay, so if you're developing these multiple identities and linguistic and cultural identities, the thing is you might see them as separate entities, things that you can enter into and step out of and go into the next one, rather than speaking from one identity. That is the mark of somebody who has low ego permeability and low, well, there could be social, cultural factors that prevent them, or maybe they like their accent, but in general, these are major factors. So I like this quote: to invest in a language is to invest in a new identity. Okay, so next thing is that there are polyglots here. So how do you deal with so many languages in your head? All right, it's your head and your heart. So you create multiple linguistic and cultural identities. I've noticed that if I feel the language, okay, so it's here, I feel it, the emotion is greater, then I can prevent cross-linguistic interference. In other words, I can stay in the language and not let a similar language come in and affect it. Because there are a lot of similar languages that I know, okay? So Polish and Russian, and I can keep them apart, usually. So I create a space in my psyche for the language. It's a sort of room where I have this language, this culture, the experiences. Okay. So the more interaction I had that was meaningful, the stronger the walls of the room are. I can come in, I can shut the door, and I can stay there for a while. So it's feeling part of the culture. It's bringing back these memories and feelings and experiences that I had within that cultural context. I'm using I. You might say the same thing. I could say we, all right? If anybody disagrees, please tell me. That would be interesting. Let's discuss it. All right? So I think this is really essential part of keeping language separate, entering into one identity, moving out, entering into another. Now remember, I don't consider this to be false identities. What is your real identity? It's haphazard. If you say, oh, my real identity, I was born in this country and my parents spoke this and that's my real identity. Why? You had no control over that. My children, or my older son, his first 3 years was speaking English, and okay, so again, his language cultural identity was not very well formed. He is 100% a Japanese speaker who talks like a foreigner in English, right? So he switched from age 3. He went through a shocking period. He held his hands like this for about a month when he switched languages, went to Japan. Okay, so the more that you have this ability, the easier it is to avoid this interference. The more that you form a gestalt of the language, the culture, the experiences, etc. Okay, so many people say that, okay, I feel different speaking one language compared to other. I'll get into that more later. Because we feel different because we're relating from a distinct set of culturally based perceptions. And they could be coexisting system of identities, modes of how we express ourselves, ways of perception for each language. And they are primed, and then therefore we feel different. They're different schemas. Okay? Well, there's many experiments which show how these come into play. So to be good at acquiring foreign language requires a flexible self-concept or flexible cultural identity, and a well-developed, strong, integrated core. And we can, again, discuss what that means, but I say it's mainly the essential values that you have. So we can switch between them in that case, and we don't suffer from dissonance. We don't suffer from, I feel strange speaking this language. Or, as I said, it could be with a monolingual who is in a situation where the accent is quite different. Do they adjust to it? Do they change their accent or not? Okay, so that finished the general self-identity and ego permeability. I open the floor up again. Microphone, please. Yeah.
I was just wondering to what extent you think of these identities as separate, and to what extent do you think the kind of original native identity that's formed when you're sort of growing up influences the kind of subsequent identities that you form? So for example, if somebody grows up in a country, goes to school, and they have kind of they interact with various social groups, and then they move to another country to go to university, and they only interact with that kind of one specific social group, how much do you think their kind of previous identity influences the new one they form? Or do you feel like
that's on an individual basis, right? So what do you think about that?
I don't know, I'm slightly confused about this. I'm kind of talking about myself at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I grew up in Poland, and when I was 19, I moved to the UK to go to university, and I kind of feel like the way I use English, the way I speak, is very tightly linked to the kind of social environment I was exposed to when I was at university and then in my job.
In the UK or in Poland?
Yeah, in the UK. So
okay.
I kind of feel like this is a completely new identity that I built from scratch, because I was never at school in the UK. I was never kind of exposed to all those sorts of people that I was exposed to in Poland when I went to school. So I kind of see it as two very separate things, but I'm just wondering whether there's any kind of research into how much these identities are related to each other.
Well, if there is, and then I try to make generalization of it, it's not very good research. If we had percentages and say 40% of the people feel this way, that what meaning? It's an individual thing, okay? So perhaps in the UK, since there was a lot of Polish immigration for work in recent years, and there are various attitudes towards Poles in the UK, there's somebody with a backpack, oh, it must be a Pole. And there's people from very different stances in terms of the desire to imitate or mimic. And imitate and mimic, it's not negative. I hate when people say, oh, I want to be original and creative. Okay, we mimic our whole life, we just choose what we mimic. So maybe if you really want to fit in, it seems that I didn't guess from when you started talking that you're from Poland. So obviously you've gone to a very high level and decided that you wanted to fit in, and you experience various emotions, and then you have certain emotions when you meet Poles in the UK who speak with a strong accent, or who don't even want to learn English at all, or correct their grammar, or change their behavior, etc. You have things that bother you, and all these things are going on in your head all the time, and they may consider you a traitor. If you look at the documentary Forum on the YouTube, it's very interesting. They go through all this, and what happens is when Poles originally went to the UK, there was people in Poland who were writing and saying, oh, great, yeah, for our country, go do it, great. And then later it was, you failures, you're going over there, you're just selfish, thinking about yourselves, and it got really negative in recent years, or when this documentary was made. Are you familiar with it? Are you familiar with this documentary Forum?
No, I'm not.
Okay, take a look at it.
But I can totally identify with what you're saying, and that's been kind of pretty much my experience. When I went over to the UK, I felt really kind of Polish, and then I've lived there for 9 years now, and when I go back, I don't feel completely sort of British. I'm not a British citizen. I don't feel sort of 100%.
Yeah.
I identify with the culture.
Can you speak Polish to the same accent that you spoke before you came easily?
No, and when I go back to Poland, I'm not 100% Polish anymore.
No, that's a reverse cultural shock. Yeah, linguistic shock. Yeah, definitely, for sure. When my first intensive language Spanish, I spoke it in Florida, but when I moved to Colombia and used it every day, my English was greatly affected by it. And when I went back to the US, and people said, you sound very Latino, And it's not difficult for me, it is difficult for me to sound like an American. With this group here, I'll start changing my accent to whoever's, if I hear a British accent, I hesitate to imitate a British accent because it sounds false to me for my own identity. That's it's easier for me, a foreign language, that's not my mother tongue. But anyhow, I'm greatly affected by what I'm hearing. When I go to India, I start doing this, and I thought, my English is so different, And, yeah. Anything else? Yes.
We thank you for mentioning Israel, because for me it was just wow, you explained it. Hello. Thank you for mentioning Israel, because for me you just right now explained some weird conversation I had a couple of days ago, and it explains for me many weird questions that I'm from born in Russia and spent my grown-up life in Israel, and I always and I teach Hebrew, and I always apologize, say, I have a slight accent, I have an accent, I have a Russian accent at Hebrew. Well, I speak Hebrew, but I have an accent. And now you explained it's really connected with...
Okay, maybe we'll get to that part in the lecture where I talk about that study. It should be quite interesting.
That's what I wanted to ask.
But when
study about.
I've talked about this on LinkedIn. Anybody use LinkedIn in various groups? Okay. And I had one guy, I kept saying, flexible identity. And, he's just a Spanish guy, an academic. No, I can't give you my accent, in English and on and on. And I said, yes, you can. And no, there's this critical period hypothesis. I grew up this way, and kind of that, mindset that I can show you this data. It means that once you pass this age, you can change your accent, all those things, right? And then I started talking about this online. And then his reaction was, wow, I think I'm going to watch a movie now. Knocked him over. But then he came back fighting again later and said, no, what you said, it hit me first, but no, I don't agree. This was like, I'm in Japan, he's in Spain, we have 8 hours difference, and I just happened to be up, he happened to be up, we're going back and forth. Everybody can see the discussion, okay? And then he's saying, wow, you've kind of hit on all these, you've answered all these questions I always had. I'm going to go, I have to think about this. I'm going to go see a movie. And he's saying I'm giving you answers, and then he told me all my answers were wrong afterwards when he decided that he didn't want to deal with that. I think one more behind. Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do you think this permeability factor can be trained or like practiced? Because I had this experience at work months ago, and there were two Croatian, I think, immigrant guys speaking in Swedish with an accent next to me. And after a while, one of them started to speak to me, and we were talking for a bit, and he asked me, where are you from? And I was like, I'm from here. It's like, but you have a Croatian accent. And I was like, I don't. I don't think so, at least. And I don't feel like this would have happened before I started learning languages. Or what do you think about this?
I'm sorry, what do I think about
Like
what?
about how this permeability becomes stronger as you learn languages. You get more used to absorbing your surroundings.
Oh yeah, paying attention to accents?
Yeah.
Yeah, you develop the ability. For example, I can usually get it right, not amongst polyglots sometimes, but people speak 2 or 3 languages. I can usually, when they're speaking English, I can usually guess, okay, that person's, German, French, but I can say that person's from Switzerland, or it sounds like southern part of Germany, northern part of Germany, etc. Oh, definitely Dutch, just for a few words, and even if they have, very good skills in English,
Yeah, but I'm thinking more like how you subconsciously start to adapt to the accents around you and stuff like that.
Oh, you mean yourself?
Yourself, yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah. Oh, I have to watch it all the time because some people react very negatively. Where are you from? You'll notice I don't write where I'm from here. People have a certain expectations. So I put Japan, it's where I've lived the longest. If you count up all the hours of speaking the language, it's the language I spoke the most.
Do you
English.
feel like it's exactly
But I have a hard time. I have a hard time at times, trying to, when I'm speaking English, to sound like I'm not a foreigner. So, I need to really work on it. Yeah. Great. Let's go. It's okay that we go continue. All right. Okay. So, we're now into self-confidence, which is strongly related to self-identity. Okay, because our identity is developed within a context of communication and interaction, and then language plays a salient role in interpersonal relationships, obviously. So language becomes a central part of the self. And changing the basic sense of who we are can be very difficult. Okay, so learning a new language challenges your sense of self, your linguistic and cultural sense of self. So our self-confidence is challenged in the process. So stripping away of language confidence that occurs when you're trying to Okay, the forward language, the first part, when you talk like a 2-year-old or 4-year-old, or even when you get quite better, you've been speaking it for 3 years, but something's holding you back. You have to have tremendous ego strength, a sense of self-esteem. So, confidence, it's a determinant of learners' willingness to interact in the target language. So, lack of self-confidence, the people overuse what Krashen calls the monitor. Always looking, how do you say this? How do you say it? Did I say it right? Okay. Before I say this, one thing, what is it? Always closely monitoring your speech instead of speaking freely. Okay. So, in other words, if you're not confident, you will always try to correct your speech. Even though the person understands you and you want to show, no, I do know that. It happens to me at this conference, because especially in languages, which I was very fluent at one point, and now if I've been speaking very many languages and I'm tired and such, then I'll start making mistakes. The second afterwards, I know it's a mistake, and then I get frustrated because then the person thinks that I don't speak that language well, but I did before. Everybody thought I was a Pole. Everybody thought I was a German. Everybody thought I was from Colombia. Oh yeah, I passed it. It sounds like you're making claims that just aren't substantiated. So it's like, So even if you know many languages, a polyglot, and you have high levels, you can suffer from the same thing, right? If you become concerned about how you appear to the other person, and we all do, okay? So the thing is trying to control that so that it doesn't affect your performance. And of course, we all know about avoiding. I'm just not going to talk about, I don't know how do you say that? Okay, I'm just going to talk about something else, because I forget the words, I don't know how to say it. But if you're self-confident also, okay, I make a mistake, it's okay, I'm going to say it anyway. And now talk about something and say, okay, yeah. And then that's accepting that you'll make mistakes, you're not worried whether they think that, you're not good at it, etc. Okay. So where do we get the confidence from? Well, we have a cognitive-based confidence, which just means you have the ability in your brain, okay? The neural networks, the knowledge. And then you have this socially constructed confidence, as I was just talking about. So it's different when you're talking to somebody who feels that you sound so good in the language, and they don't even have to say anything just by the way they react to you. They don't pigeonize the language you're speaking. Okay? When somebody thinks you don't speak well, they'll change the words they're using. I mean, the worst case is when I was working in a factory in Germany, and there was one German guy. He used to always walk around and go, and he came up to me and he would say, "Oh, Besen." Yeah, okay. Ich habe keine Zeit jetzt und ich komme später. And then he'd still go, Besen. No matter how complicated I made the sentence, he couldn't hear. He's just thinking, I cannot. So, it's an insult, as we know. Okay? So.
What is Besen?
Broom. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's to sweep. He's telling me I had to sweep up. Yeah. But he's not, full sentence, he's just, yeah. Okay. So, developing this confidence, it's a feeling of having an internal locus of control. You're not controlled by the outside. We are affected by the other person's reaction. But internal control means that when it's negative, we can have the strength to still function as we want to function. Okay? So we gain proficiency cognitively and socially. With the social interaction skills, how to carry on a smooth conversation, etc. Okay, and communicate in an effective way. And then this will promote the socially constructive confidence. So, presumably, Brown said, a person with high self-esteem is able to reach out beyond himself more freely, to be less inhibited. We talk about extroversion, introversion. Well, this is just kind of a measurement, but No matter where you are on the scale, you face the same thing. And because of the ego's strength, going back to identity, to make the necessary mistakes that are involved in learning a language and not feel threatened. Okay, so the self-confidence or self-efficacy, it explains why people who possess similar knowledge in the language, so cognitive, the cognitive confidence, you know, yeah, I know this language well, but they differ widely in their performance and behavior. Okay, so why? Beliefs regarding their capabilities are the most important. It's not what you can actually do. That's important. You can't say, you can have never studied Finnish, I've never learned Finnish, I know Moe. And I can't say, oh, I'm going to, you know, yeah, I'll give you a second. I believe that I'm going to speak it. But if you have that, if you have the cognitive confidence and the cognitive ability, then the belief is going to determine what you can actually do. Okay, it looks like at this point some questions. I'm willing to open it up. Where does she? Yeah, back there, please.
No. You said Moe.
Oh, thank you. I loved it. I was just thinking about your presentation too as I was coming upstairs and some things came to. Oh, Moe. Okay, I see. Yeah. Yes. The mic, please.
Mike? I guess you were saying that the correlation between self-confidence and the monitor syndrome is something frequent, but not necessarily true. I think, because if I think about myself, I am normally perceived by myself and by others as a self-confident person, but I continuously monitor my speech.
Okay, there are many types of confidence, and I noticed that actually this presentation is supposed to end in 6 minutes, and we're at 1/20th of my presentation. But the interesting thing is I could bring in other parts of all these things I write about to answer that more effectively, but there are various types of confidence. And so you in generally may be a very self-confident person, and maybe that confidence is not threatened by if you make a mistake in the language. And so maybe your monitoring is related to you still...
I want to improve.
It's improved.
I want to improve.
Oh, you want to improve
the
that?
speech. So I want to check that thing.
Well, I would guess still you may lack some performance confidence in the language, right? Even though in general you're a confident person. Okay, so self-confidence as a general personality trait and confidence in a certain task. I mean, in general, for example, you could have people who are extremely self-confident, and then but they say, I'm terrible at languages, you know, because they want to protect this general self-confident by saying, oh, there's something wrong with me, you know, or they want to believe in the critical period hypothesis. I never learned it as a child, and you know, all these different excuses. Okay, shall we go on? Come back. Okay. Did I do this? Okay, yeah. So if you believe you have no power to produce results, you will not try. That's obvious, right? So people who believe that they can succeed are the ones that try. So in the case of foreign languages, many of the challenges of one's self-image are there because it's natural to make mistakes, right? So the self-confidence or self-efficacy is an important component of something else I talk about later, emotional resilience. Okay. Now, this is a general discussion of self-confidence, the power of expectations that you're talking about being in the UK, and if somebody at first identified you as a Pole, you have so many expectations you got to fight against there, right? Okay. If I say I'm American, the joke says I'm monolingual, right? So anyhow, okay. So they can become self-fulfilling prophecies. So there was a very interesting investigation with elementary school children where they gave them intelligence tests, and then they said, okay, we'll tell the teacher, this group, you know, they had this unusual ability, and later in the year, they're just going to blossom and outperform everybody else. They just randomly picked this group. These not true. But the teacher thought it was true. Okay, so what happened? All right, so 8 months later, those that were intelligent, labeled intelligent, they made the great increase in their results on their tests. Okay, so the teacher's expectations regarding the intellectual performance of these allegedly special children led to an actual change in their intellectual performance. And this is in a book called Pygmalion in the Classroom. Okay, if you're interested, a long time ago, 1968. Okay, so why? They gave special attention to the students? Probably, okay. But explicit and implicit messages, you know, yeah, you can do it, sure. Okay, so building a belief. They build belief in the students that they could do it. So the students' motivation, self-esteem, self-confidence increase. Microphone?
Were the children in this experiment aware of their...
No, of course not. They, you know, I think they were at an age where they wouldn't even, they wouldn't understand anyway. The teachers weren't aware, otherwise this wouldn't work, right? Okay, yeah, exactly. Now we have the opposite. We have the stereotype threat negative effect on performance, and everybody is vulnerable to it. Okay, in some way or another. Okay, for example, white people in regards to appearing you're a racist, or people from low socioeconomic backgrounds compared to high socioeconomic backgrounds on intellectual tests. Men compared to women about social sensitivity. Asian men in mathematics. Whites compared to blacks and Hispanics on sports performance. Young girls whose gender has been highlighted. In other words, you have to check it. When you do the test, you check a box: male, female, some other indicators, priming them. Remember, you're a young girl. They do worse on the math test then. Okay, so these things are very strong. Wow, I didn't. You know what I did before this? I had 24 point, and I was told that you couldn't see it, so I was quickly trying to make it bigger. So the factors that play a role in whether you're vulnerable to this is group membership, who you identify with, whether you have a strong local. Internal locus of control, as I was just saying. You know, how affected are you by the people outside? Do you still feel in control? We hit 50 minutes if anybody wants to leave. Okay. Shall I go on? It's okay? All right. Okay, so we have these defense mechanisms, okay? So we can use self-defeating strategies. All right? We can discount the task. Oh, this is not important. Who cares about, so what? Okay? So some of these mechanisms that underlie this threat are lower performance expectations, psychological arousal and anxiety, reduced effort, reduced self-control, reduced working memory, and that comes from, if I get into it, if we still stay here for a little while, it comes, neurologically it comes from your limbic system, your amygdala, which gives you the fear, which raises things emotionally, and this actually blocks the cognitive processes in your brain. It affects working memory. Working memory, everybody understand what that means? It's like what you have to hold in your head, the 2 or 3 things you have to hold in your head in order to get something done. Okay, speed, creativity, etc. Okay, so how do we deal with this? Okay, first of all, we become aware of it. Okay, we see how it affects, what affects us, and we become aware of it. Demographic factors too, okay, so, the economic status, the social status, gender, etc. All right? So you envision yourself, I'm a complex, multifaceted person. All right? You can't label me. Right? And you engage in self-affirmation, and you think about your strengths and self-worth. So we can use this to support a positive self-image as a speaker in the target foreign language. Okay. For example, combating racial profiling. I run into it all the time in Asia. Okay, most of my life is in Asia. In Japan, I used to run it when I was first in Japan even more because there were less foreigners who could actually speak Japanese. So, I go to a store and people would they wouldn't want to wait on me because they don't want to speak English. And so, I had to, say, I had to speak very clearly and say something colloquially so to get their attention. That's gone down a lot. But for example, in Thailand, they don't expect foreigners to speak Thai. So I'll say something perfectly clear, long sentence or a question, and the other person will answer back in broken English. I mean, we've all experienced these kind of things, right? Even when it's not racial profiling. Okay. So these guys, they activated implicit associations in an experiment. They say, okay, you're clever or you're stupid. All right? They had not necessarily all these experiments just say, hey, you're clever, you're stupid, you're clever. They had ways of getting people to prime themselves thinking that they're either clever or stupid. So those who got the clever cues, they were slow in their reaction time after they made an error on the working memory task. They had to do this memory task, okay? While the reverse pattern was seen for those labeled as stupid. Okay, so the clever people, they're going, the stupid people, okay. And so, what happened was they're looking at the brains, what's going on in the brains. The brains were acting differently when they made a mistake. When they're primed with the word clever and they made a mistake, an error, there was enhanced activity in the medial prefrontal cortex. This increased activity was not seen after a correct answer, because correct answer is okay, all right, we got it correct, now goodbye. But when they made a mistake, they had to why did they make the mistake? Why did they make the mistake? All right? But importantly, this was not seen when the subjects had been primed with stupid. They made a mistake, no increased activity in this part of the brain. And it's not trying to learn from the mistakes. All right? So this part of the brain, they're involved in executive functions such as attention, memory, etc. Okay, so identifying future goals, executive functions include identifying future goals and recognizing actions that will achieve these goals. So priming with clever can increase self-confidence or self-esteem. And so those who were clever in this experience, it appears to correspond to motivation to actual action of learning from mistakes. So this is a very interesting experiment because they actually were using a method to measure the brain activity. So, clear report about what's going on. So if you're clever, then you learn from your mistakes. If you're stupid, the mistakes are natural, and any effort to learn from them seems to be useless endeavor. You're stupid anyway. You can't learn. Okay, so now I finished that one self. Now we're in optimism. It's 12:56. So I go on? Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions, comments on this part? Yes, Mike, please.
It's not really a question, it's just I thought others might find this useful. There is an interesting book, it's written by Dan Ariely, and it's called Predictably Irrational, and it deals with those issues like self-priming and other behavioral patterns like that. Sorry? It's called Predictably Irrational, and it deals with those peculiarities in our thinking, like self-priming that was just described in the presentation, and how we can observe them in the first place, and then how can we circumvent them.
You said self-priming, right? There's two types of priming. You can be primed, somebody's priming you, or from the outside or something. Priming means you, again, like I bring to your attention your ethnicity, your gender, or, well, anything, it's just an experience or whatever, okay? For example, one type of priming is if you want to test if language affects the way people perceive things, especially values, what you do is you give them something that's value laden. In other words, they expect you to react to it as positive or negative. And if this differs between the two cultures, okay, so you'll prime them with speech or something or symbols to identify with the culture where that's considered good. You need individuals who are fluent or bilingual or bicultural or at least have high levels of experience in both cultures and languages. So you prime them in that one language or culture where it's considered good, and the reaction is different than if you had primed them in the other. Now when you say self-priming, we can self-prime ourselves, kind of this positive thinking thing, and that's a long discussion, but yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Up front here?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you about an experiment, you probably know it, but there was also an experiment in which people had to do this task, as you were explaining, but then they showed them pictures of, it was a group of people, by the way, of like 50 years and older, and they showed them pictures first of elderly people holding walking sticks and things like that, and they were also much slower in performing the tasks than the ones who had been labeled with clever, that showed like thinking activity after each mistake.
Yes, and they measure that. They measure that by they show them these pictures, and then they measure after experiment how they walk when they leave the room.
Yeah. So they're primed in that way.
They're primed, and so we have natural empathy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Again, if you think mimicking or imitation is some kind of falseness in your life, then you need to think what it actually means. Okay, that how much we actually do it. Over here, please.
The danger of commercials as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
The suggestion of predictably irrational, I'd like to add the book Thinking Fast and Slow, which I think goes into quite a lot more depth in similar subjects.
Yeah, it's similar, and that was brought up in I don't know. Maybe I commented on that in some other. Anyhow. Yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow. I think it's a great book, but sometimes I think it's a little misunderstood because the priming affects whether you think fast or slow. Oh, it was somebody who said risk. Yeah, if you think in a foreign language, then you're risk averse. That really has to be unpacked and explained. What it means is, the fast thinking is you just kind of gut feeling, you react. The slow thinking is you step back and you think about it, etc. Okay? So what happens in a foreign language is that they tend to step back a little bit more, okay? Because the words don't compute as fast what it means. And so as they're thinking about, what does this actually mean? Then they move into a slow thinking mode. Yeah. That's also the priming. Okay, shall I go on? Oh, yeah, go ahead. That's right over here. Yeah. If you want to leave, just anytime. I won't feel bad or anything. Okay, but I want to go on. Should I go on? Yeah, I want to go on as long as people want to stay. So because it's lunchtime. If you're hungry, you got something to do. Go right ahead.
Because I'm very interested. I would like to ask you if you can give us in a few words the summary of the next 16 sections that you are going to that you have prepared. Not just the name, just to have an idea of what you are going to do next.
Or is there a conclusion maybe?
No, there's no conclusion. Okay, if I gave you a conclusion, then that's that kind of research that says, as I said before, 30% of people do this and 40% do this. What does that mean? I'm not a positivist, but I use this type of statistical analysis. It's the only way that you can get your book published in academic or field or at certain conferences, because people in social science, and this is psychology is also social science, they have this strange inferiority complex. They think that they're positivist-based, they have materialistic worldview. I could talk for. I better stop talking about that. Okay. No, I can't. Should I go on or not? I can't give you a summary. I can only point out things and. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. Yes. Okay. All right. So I like these quotes. I guess you had time to read them. All right. No, and you probably read that. Yes. Okay. Optimism. So there are real limits. You know. I mean, if you just because you're optimistic doesn't mean you're going to succeed. Okay. But the majority of the limits that actually hold us back in doing something, they are just in the form of the attitudes and false assumptions. The majority. So fear of failure is the strongest. And that's, again, the amygdala, limbic system coming in, okay? Fear of failure and perceived consequences is a common hindrance to success and achievement, especially in language acquisition. Sorry, what? Don't understand?
The word hindrance.
Oh, hindrance? Something that... Obstacle, thank you. Obstacle? Yeah. Okay, so it's especially true in case of foreign language, and since there's no doubt that debilitating, you understand, debilitating anxiety, debilitating means like disability, you can't do it anymore. Debilitating anxiety destroys performance. So what we're looking at here is not the ability to understand a language or read a language or write a language. It's the ability, as we're doing now, to converse in a language. Okay? So that's when these come into play. All right? So social anxiety, etc., those things that really destroy your performance. So you were talking about self-confidence. In general, you're a self-confident person. This is not related to self-confidence, but we have also dispositional self-confidence. In general, it's a trait of yours, you might say. So there's dispositional optimism, pessimism. So in general, to find generalized experience concerning the importance of future positive, optimistic, or negative outcomes. You know, you normally have a positive view or a negative view. Personal optimism correlates strongly with self-esteem. Okay, that's why I pointed that out. With psychological well-being and personal health. So optimists live longer, they don't catch colds as much. This is totally true. Yeah, there's an experiment where they put these people in a hotel in New York. And they exposed them all, they figured out they did tests to see who's optimist and who's pessimist. Then they gave them all the same cold germ. And the ones that were optimists usually didn't catch the cold. The pessimists got the cold. Your immune system goes down if you're generally negative. Okay? Okay, if you're optimist, you can cope with stress more. If you're a pessimist, then psychological maladjustment. So you go into a new culture, it's going to be harder. Obviously, it's going to be harder to learn the language, etc. Okay, so there are always these obstacles and setbacks when we're learning a foreign language. So how do we overcome them and maintain optimism? All right? Well, this is an essential part of emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, which is also very strong in my study. Okay? So we need, with optimism, we can reduce the loss of self-confidence and the feeling of we can't do it, inadequacy. So by maintaining optimism, we can maintain a healthy level of emotional energy. Your interaction requires emotional energy. And when you're talking to people who feed you energy, then you're much better in your performance than when you're talking to people who steal your energy. Okay? And you steal other people's. And sometimes you give people energy, sometimes you take it away. All right? Now, I'm not talking about something that, is metaphysical. I am in one sense. I believe both of them. I'm talking about emotional energy. You can measure it. If you're a materialist and you really want all that, you can measure it. So interaction with somebody can either increase or decrease your emotional energy. I'm sure we all know these things. You tend to avoid people who take away your emotional energy. Oh, there's a thing. Oh, and then, there's so-and-so. And you go, give me a hug. Now I can do anything. We know that instinctively. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't go through this because this is the neurobiology. Yeah? Yeah.
I just, before you even end your presentation, I want to thank you very much because everything you just said practically proves the science of NLP, of neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah.
Because you said, can you overcome setbacks, can you overcome things? And because this is so related to language, I'm also an NLP trainer, so it's called neuro-linguistic.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but maybe a lot of people aren't.
No, I
So,
know,
yeah,
but it's wonderful because actually you're just proving that by self-talk and by self-priming, it can be done.
Yeah,
so thank you.
That's true. Okay, what I have here is the neurobiology of it, why it works, but maybe a lot of these terms about parts of the brain, etc. Maybe you've heard of neurotransmitter dopamine that like you work out real hard. Schwarzenegger said it was better than sex to work out really hard. He's pumped up afterwards. You got the dopamine flowing, etc. Okay, the endogenous opiates that are produced. Okay, yeah.
What about overconfidence? How
Overconfidence. I mean, it's just like when we talk about optimism or confidence. There's a lot. The problem is there's a lot of misunderstanding. That comes up. Okay, well, if you're overconfident, you'll fail and stuff. As I said, confidence comes from two things. One's cognitive confidence. You actually have that ability in you through study, through experience, or whatever. Okay? And then socially constructed confidence. So the overconfidence might be referring to you think you have that ability in your brain, you don't. Something like that. And obvious that, it's not going to work if you... The idea of confidence is being able to do what you can actually do. Like if I'm confident that I run out here and jump and land on my feet like a cat, am I going to do it? No. Okay? Physically, etc., And so if we say that's a physical example, so in the brain, if you don't have that ability, then all the self-confidence in the world may not work. All right? But I mean, you catch what I'm saying.
How to deal with people that are overconfident in learning? Because I get a student.
Microphone.
How to deal with overconfidence with teenagers, for example, because in their learning, I find very challenging to deal with this. Sometimes they refuse to catch new material.
They think, okay, I know it all, I don't have to listen. I don't know, I'm not a teacher of language. Sorry. No, really, I mean, you're talking about a method, how to... Basically, when I do this research, I'm always thinking about my own experience. I'm interested in my own experience, but by looking at my own experience and then telling it to you, hopefully it means something to you, and then you can use it. You see what I'm saying? I'm not very good at coming up with a technique, Like, I don't want to put down language learning techniques, etc. Okay, this is the way. Okay, if you believe, if somebody sells you on a language learning technique, and you believe it's the best technique, then it is the best technique. If you believe it, and it works for you, okay? If they've convinced you, and then there you follow what they're saying, and then you go down that path, and you believe in it, it's going to work for you. Okay, so I'm not... techniques and such, I wouldn't know exactly what to say in that case. I'm just kind of pointing these things out, and I think we have to know ourselves. We have to know our own, way our own brain works, right? Because we're all different. So I'm not very good at it. There are some skilled people who can do that in that field. They're saying, okay, this technique works. I'm not one of those. Yeah. Shall I go on?
Yeah. When you mention confidence and overconfidence, it's probably overconfidence of ignorance.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. They don't know, they're overconfident. Exactly. They don't know what's really involved. Right, okay. Okay, again, this is very interesting, but it would take two, if you're not familiar with neurology, okay. So I just put it in there in case there were some, it's in my book, I discuss it a lot. So if you want to read my book sometime, just go online, and when you don't understand something, you can go to Wikipedia, and it will show you part of the brain, and you can read all this stuff. And I educated myself this way. I mean, that's the way we learn. I didn't know anything about it 5 years ago. 5 years of literature study. I quoted about 5,000 papers and books. I just learned. But it's okay. No. So I'm trying to do that summary, which was asked before. Okay, let's just jump to this one, because this is extremely important. Emotional resilience. All right? Look what Darwin said. Who survives? The ones that are able to adapt, not the strongest. So resilience means that you can be in a situation which can really affect you negatively, but you come out, you can get through it unharmed, emotionally, intellectually, etc. So it's having courage and patience. It's being able to come back, rebound from misfortune or a traumatic experience. So it's kind of a tenacity in that you have this strength that helps you continue on with life. And so you try to grab everything there is in life to make it, that the things in life that make life so interesting, instead of pulling back from it, okay? Because emotionally you've been hurt, all right? So it's like being able to go into relationships and being the willingness to be hurt. So when we have a clear sense of identity and purpose, we're more resilient. Okay, so emotional states can greatly influence our ability to acquire target language. Right? Emotional resilience is associated with maintaining a positive attitudinal states conducted to acquisition. Okay, I'll just make a statement here, and I could back it up, but all learning requires emotions. All right? All learning has an emotional aspect. When I say emotional aspect, I'm talking about the parts of your brain that are related to emotions, the limbic system, the amygdala, etc. Okay? Okay, so here's the neurobiology of it. Okay, so you have the, I just said there was, yeah, okay, well, this will take a while to explain it. All right, but this is the neural functioning of it. There's a difference. People are quick to recover. They have strong connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Again, the amygdala is down there in your brain. The amygdala, there's two, and that's where the fear comes, anxiety, but there's positive aspects to the amygdala. It's excitement, etc. The amygdala comes in play. If you do bungee jumping, the amygdala is going to be going crazy. But when you have a locus of control and you think you're not going to die, then you get a kick out of it. If you really thought you were going to die from a bungee jump, you wouldn't enjoy it for sure, right? Okay, so that's what we're talking about in terms of the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex and the interaction between them, etc. Okay, so. Okay, this again. It's the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain which expanded greatly because that's what we need for social interaction. Okay, it stops us from killing somebody when they make us angry. All right, or just grabbing whatever we want. All those inhibiting factors. Okay, so basically, I went through this because I talk about non-stress tendency. Some people have a tendency to stress out more than others, and that gives us a social anxiety. And then stress management. Well, these are related because you can actually look into the neurological factors and say, this is what happens. You can train your brain, okay? None of this, this is the way my brain is. Your brain is extremely plastic. I don't care what age you are. I'm not a young boy anymore, okay? And I'm always training myself in new ways, you know, new languages and such. The more languages you learn, the more that you study, the more that you engage in. Many studies show that dementia, Alzheimer's delayed. Not only that, but there's many other significant benefits. Okay. I think I'm going too long. I mean, am I okay? You still want to stay? No. Seriously, if you want to stop me, I'll go. I want to eat it too, but I'll go on.
So you can go before 2, otherwise lunch is closed.
I've been eating too much since I've been here anyways. Yeah.
I am interested in microphone.
Microphone. Yeah.
I would like first you to thank you for the talk, and
That means you think it's over now. Okay.
No, I mean that is it possible that you somehow send it to me to email, because I am interested to look the data that you skip in the beginning.
The presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't mind. It might be a big file though. So, yeah, it's coming. It's better to buy the book, but yeah. I wish I knew. I mean, Springer, well, this is being recorded on YouTube. Okay, they asked me to do the front cover, the back cover, and the marketing, and I'm patiently waiting for the contract to come. I'm waiting. It's no problem. Don't worry. So I don't know for sure, but the editing's been done and everything. So. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I don't know, really. But it's a great company, and this happens to everybody.
By the next conference.
Yes, I think so. What this part is very interesting about the neurobiology. Cortisol. Do you know what cortisol is? It's important in stress. Okay, and what happens is that in the morning, cortisol is at a peak level. And it decreases throughout the day. But if you're suffering from certain types of stress or stress tendency, your cortisol doesn't go down. You stay stressed. And cortisol is extremely important for you to consolidate memories, etc., and to have episodic dreams. Your episodic to have dreams in which things make sense. All right. Sometimes dreams don't. Dreams. I don't know how many lucid dreamers there are, whether you remember your dream, okay, and whether you realize you're dreaming. But the more you do that, the more you see how you dream. Now, what happens if you're stressed and your cortisol doesn't go down and you go to sleep, you have some really strange dreams. And not only that, you cannot form strong long-term memories of your experiences. And for me, dreaming has been a very important part of my progress in languages I'm learning, especially when in an immersion type situation. So that's an interesting part about stress and dreaming and such. Okay. Yeah. So that's a larger simple report performance. Yeah. If your cortisol's level high, your explicit memory tasks lower, lower social support, higher perceived stress, etc. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Here, when you go to bed, you have strange dreams, and they interfere with the hippocampal neocortical interactions. And so they disrupt the consolidation of episode, like a TV, you see you're watching the dream and it's like you're watching a story, that kind of dream, okay? And so it alters the coherence, the story, the plot doesn't make any sense, this is really a weird dream. You probably have high cortisol levels at that time. You're not getting your episodic dreams, which are required to really cement things into your mind, okay?
So in a certain sense, when our dreams make sense, is better. It means that.
Well, you go through all types of dreaming, but we all require episodic dreams to a certain extent in order to assimilate if you're in a foreign country and let's say you're in a foreign country now and you're trying to learn the language and you're working at a job, etc., and there's many things that you're trying to learn, then you definitely require some episodic dreams. Okay,
Episodic means that the makes
this is going to be on YouTube. If I allow comments, people are going to say, oh, you didn't say that. I'm just talking kind of general, like you could be more specific for the reasons. Some people would dispute this and that. But episodic dreams, as they're showing, play a very important role, okay, in memory formation. So yeah, I'll just stop at that. So you can imagine, yeah, they're important. But it's not that you want all your dreams to be coherent, etc. No, I'm not saying that, oh, I don't have coherent dreams, so something wrong with me.
So episodic dreams.
Yeah, well look, high mean levels of cortisol not only negatively affect memory during the day, they also, as I said here, right, affect memory consolidation at night. Okay, I say it here. Okay, you have bizarre dreams if you don't. So sleeping dreams is so important in your journey, becoming fluent in this way.
So episodic means not bizarre.
No, it can be bizarre, but is it choppy or episodic? No, episodic memory, it seems to, at least looking at a story, it can be bizarre. It's a storyline, episode, instead of flash of thoughts coming through. Are you aware of your dreams? Okay, so
sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. So some people are. I think it's great to work at becoming a lucid dreamer. It helps me in my language acquisition. Lucid dreaming means that you realize that you're dreaming, and this is something that can be verified by measuring the brain activity, what's activated. Okay, I test things. I tested when I was in Poland, and after the first month of being there, using Polish every day, I already spoke Serbian, Croatian pretty well, so I had a Slavic language there. But in my dreams, the Poles were speaking to me normally, and I was speaking bad Polish. And then I said, okay, I'm dreaming, and then, oh, wait a second, that means these Poles talk, this is not verbatim, so in my mind, I made up that conversation. So that means I potentially am at that level grammatically and vocabulary-wise. It has to be. There's no other way. It's not verbatim. Oh, okay. Ah, yeah. Oh, let's go back and check that out again. And I was doing that because I come out of a dream. Maybe at least all of us have been kind of, it feels great, right? Half dreaming, half awake. And that state, you got both going on at the same time. But the trick is to fall back into dream at will and change the story and look at what you want. And that increases as you practice it more. And I would say, if you're suffering from this, I'm not a very stressed person. I'm kind of relaxed. And I've kind of made my life relaxed life.
I'm just wondering, that kind of in terms of the stress management, is it true that all stress is purely psychological, or is it possible to have only physical reactions to the stress? And if so, how could you manage that on a physical level if psychologically you aren't feeling stressed?
Well, there's a number of ways to answer that question. It's here, but I really feel we don't have time to keep going through all that information. Whether stress is negative or positive depends on your beliefs about stress greatly. If you see stress as something negative, it will be negative. If you see it positive, it can give you energy. Okay? So, I'm stressed out, don't do that. And people react to stress in different ways, and then they get more dysfunctional, and then because other people, if you're a currency trader, okay, then probably you thrive on stress. Or you see stress as something positive, it's positive energy. So it's not necessarily negative or positive, it's how we react to that, and I said that. But anxiety and stress are the same chemical reactions in the body, in general, but our beliefs then can change. Okay, let's see. You can have be a generally anxious person, or you can have temporal anxiety. Cognitive input processing, yes, sure. That's what it is. I had to get in something.
Could you just list some effective factors for I see the stress is on exploring the social.
Well, yeah, all of these are, but the social factors, they're all tied together. It's how you label them, okay? So when we talked about self-identity, that's obviously a social factor too, right? Okay, so it's obviously a psychological factor. And it's obviously an attitudinal factor. I just used SPA. Before I wrote everything and I just called them psychological traits. But then it kind of discounted the role of, as if psychological traits exist in a vacuum, and they don't. So there's a social aspect of it. And then some people will say, argue what is a psychological trait and what is an attitude, right? So you put them all together and I don't have to worry about it. That's what we're talking about. But let me just go back up here. Maybe we should wind it up, don't you think? If I'm going to try to give a summary. But there's another question. You want to go? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to ask you about building beliefs. How do you build a belief and how do you maintain it?
The first step is understanding your beliefs. So there's one section, as you see, that one part is self-awareness. So self-awareness of your beliefs. There are many beliefs you don't know that you don't have. Yeah, you don't know what they are. Exactly. Okay, so it's exploring those. Ways to explore it is becoming mindful. For me, a lot of it is noticing mindfulness, and periodically I do fasting and meditation and yoga, and then other times I just eat sloppily and drink a lot of beer and wine. I go through these stages. But when I say, okay, I'm going to go through a stage where I'm going to go into fasting and meditation and such, and just relax to a certain level, that's when I really become noticing. I build up my ability to notice, and then I try to hold on to that, and I try to take a look at myself, create a third eye. I mean, you have to know yourself, you have to know how your brain functions and understand your feelings, and it's always a life journey, and and then it's just, you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
yeah.
Obviously,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's, I don't like to say, oh, here's a technique. Now that I've told you all this, just buy my technique, and then you just do this every day, and then you'll know yourself. But I would suggest reading Jiddu Krishnamurti, okay, we'll talk about him afterwards. Yeah, self-reflection.
It's always like these waves. I mean, periods of slow meditation, realization. It's not productive. It's not productive. There are periods when you can of quiet contemplation, and then comes the.
Yeah. I know. I didn't mean to say that, we all need to go fast and meditate. What I mean is that those were times where I understood what mindfulness is. Okay, I'll give you an example that relates to language. It was quite interesting. I had been fasting over a number of weeks, and I was in Thailand, and I went to a steam bath at a monastery, not a monastery, at a what's it name? A temple, a Buddhist temple. And there's a lot of foreigners on that island called Tao, and I came out and just standing there, and I talking to the local lady in Thai, and this guy came up and he had heard me talking Thai, so he started talking Thai to me. But I realized immediately that he's German from his Thai accent in Thai, and so I don't know, maybe it was nasty for him, so I started talking to him in German. And that he didn't like that at all, it seemed, because I identified that he had a German accent in Thai. And so then, and also I left out that he also said, Pom Go Pu Pasatai, I can also speak Thai, and so, okay, and he was kind of, yeah, I speak many languages, okay. And so then he got frustrated, and what did he go next? I think we went to Italian and French and Russian. We went through about 11 languages, and every time that he hit me, I just started talking in that language, and then I think at one point, I forget which language he was speaking, but I said, okay, now you have a Thai accent in that language. And I was able to really hold a good accent in all those languages. From past experience, I performed at my highest level I've ever had in every single language, because I'm totally relaxed and just, not letting anything interfere. And I was noticing what was going on in him, and then finally his ability just, and he just kind of, he went and sat somewhere else. And that could have been me. I could have wanted to show off, but I don't want it to be me. I don't, you know what I mean? We all want to show ourselves in a positive way, but maybe he didn't have the mindfulness of what was going on emotionally with him and the whole interaction, etc. So just in that state, But I have my weaknesses. What I found at this Polyglot conference is, through my mindfulness, I found that talking to various people here, like languages which I passed as a native speaker at one point, if I started speaking to people, and like Polish, when I was in Poland for 2 years, and then as I started thinking, was that the right ending? Was that the genitive case? And I started thinking that way, and I doubted what I said, and so my Polish was like going down. So I just switched languages, because I mindfully said to myself, look, I don't want the people listening to me now think that I really can speak the language, and I just thought, oh yeah, I could speak it great in the past, but I can't. And I say that too. With Greek, it's true. I got pretty high in Greek, but I really can't speak Greek now, just a little bit, So that type of thing, just aware of my emotions all the time. We all deal with it, So if I could relax all the time, not care about those things, and let my mind flow, I'd do much better in everything, I can tell you what I think is going on, but it doesn't mean I'm really good at it. Maybe awareness has helped me, and I got better at it, but, it's a personal journey. Yeah. Shall we end here? Or, yeah, I think so. Okay, just one last thing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. In your book, you identify a lot of factors, but do you give some solutions how to deal with them? Because you are management specialist.
Yeah. Well, as you read through, again, no, okay. I do, but I don't do it in the sense of, as I said, buy the book because now you know how to do it. No. I just want to bring your attention to it. In most cases, sometimes I talk about my own experiences, right? But I don't want to sell any solutions, because humans are too complicated.
Because one side is to know what are the factors, but another side is to know how to deal with them. So
when you understand a problem, you have a solution already. The understanding a problem is a solution. Any problem. Once you define the problem completely, you know what the solution is. Now, whether you've carried out the solution or not, that's different. Anything. Let me leave it at that, and you think about that. Okay, so, yeah.
Yes, on the same note, I was thinking that it's the last day of the conference, and I was hearing about many advanced and practical tips, and I was thinking yesterday exactly about that same thing. Like, how come I'm listening? When people are describing problems they want to overcome, I identify with them completely. When you start telling about their solutions, I think I kind of turn. Just sometimes, oh yes, maybe it's. Yeah,
I don't want to put it down, but I agree with what you're saying. No, again, I mean, a certain method of language learning, a certain method of doing this, a certain method, I overcome this way. I think it's good to share. Maybe what I do can help you, but I would never say it's the way.
But
it is the way.
It's the perfect thing. Like, wow, I'm listening to him saying, wow, now I know what I have to do. Now I know. It gives.
But wow only really comes, the true wow is when you understand it, and you've created a solution in your own mind.
Exactly.
Nobody creates a problem. Every single problem, whether we're angry, sad, happy, whatever, we've created it. It doesn't matter the input. Input, nothing is good or bad, it's just how we react to it. Right? Okay. The crowd is greatly diminished. Thank you very much.